So Airbnb, 2007, here these two dudes in San Francisco. The story goes that they basically had an expensive apartment. Well, it's San Francisco, duh, of course. So, very expensive apartment. What do they do to pay the rent? Well, they had a brilliant idea. Well, let's get some air mattresses and put them here in the dining room, right? And let somebody live there for some money. Let's say you have rented this apartment there and you signed a lease for 12 months. You're on the hook for 12 months, right? And in the summer, you decide to go backpacking, like the Himalaya Beacons or something. So that's great. But that means that 2 months in the summer, your apartment is empty, but you still have to pay the rent, right? So you're away, you still pay the rent. And this basic fact doesn't change whether the apartment really stays empty or whether, maybe with the help of Airbnb, you can put some temporary lodger in there that pays you something. So I already mentioned that when you rent that thing, that apartment for 12 months, you're on the hook for 12 months. If in between you're not there and you rent out that space, well, that doesn't change anything about your economic situation. You would have paid for that apartment anyhow. So whether or not you put somebody in there is completely irrelevant for the fixed cost of the apartment. So in other words, you have zero opportunity cost because normally the fallback would be that the apartment simply stays empty. So your opportunity cost is an empty apartment that I still pay for. So zero opportunity cost. You wouldn't use it for something else. Now, if Airbnb puts somebody in there, you are better off, clearly, right? You make some extra money. In fact, every little bit of money that Airbnb gives you makes you better off because you don't have any costs associated with that. In fact, the only costs that are really associated for you as the host are any variable cost. So maybe some cleaning, maybe the towels that you prepare, or like a bottle of wine if you're really a super host or so. And of course the occasional fixing of the apartment after that raucous party, right? But that's about it. The fixed cost you can basically ignore. And that's a fundamentally different thing here, right? Fundamentally different in the sense that if we compare that to, let's say, a hotel, we have a completely different reality, right? As a host for Airbnb, I have an asset that I created for myself. I rented that apartment. I pay for the apartment. And if there's some occasional spare capacity, it doesn't really cost me anything to give that away. But if I build a hotel and I outfit the rooms and I make them really nice, like in the Schiller here, okay? So if I do that, well, all the cost that were involved in building the hotel, since I built the hotel for the specific purpose of renting out the rooms, need to be borne by the people that stay in the rooms, right? Otherwise, the hotel will be bankrupt. So that's the basic difference. The old economy, or the economy that revolves around specific special purpose units, they have to calculate with all the cost. Whereas somebody like Airbnb, well, does not. This difference, this zero opportunity cost issue here, is actually very similar to the concept of synergies. You know what a synergy is, right? A synergy, when you have, let's say, two businesses that merge, right? And one business has some assets that it can give the other business, that business could use to create an advantage, but doesn't have yet. So this is synergy. Right? But the point is that the first business that has this asset, well, they created this asset for their own purpose, for their particular business. And then after they merge, they say, oh, I have these resources, this brand name or this access or whatever. And now you can also use that. But guess what? All the costs that went into building that brand name, they are already born. They're already spent. That thing is literally free. So the combination of the two firms that have this synergy in the market, that combination has an advantage over other firms in the market of that firm that uses the synergy that do not have these assets. Because these other firms, if they want the same asset, they have to spend time and money in building the assets. And that firm here doesn't have to, because guess what? I got it from these guys. I got it for free. So synergy is nothing else than a cost saving that turbocharges your approach in a particular market because you already have an asset developed somewhere else. That's what a synergy truly is. And that's exactly the same thing here. Airbnb. When Airbnb as an aggregator taps into an enormous pool, really, of underutilized assets that are not just underutilized, but really have zero opportunity cost. I mean, you have the apartment there. You don't need to change anything about it. You just open the door, right? So when they do that, then any little bit of money that they give the hosts will be appreciated. And that basically means that Airbnb has a source of enormous cost advantage. Cost advantage via, well, the traditional firms. The hotels out there, the Marriotts that have to count with every penny, with every bit of investment that they have there. So, on the firm level, true sharing allows us to tap into low-cost assets, which gives us a huge advantage. True sharing. If it's not true, if there were a huge opportunity cost, well, then that's not true. Because these opportunity costs mean that if I could use the asset somewhere else for a lot of money and I give it to you, I need to get that lot of money from you. It's not free. But if I didn't plan on using that and now you take it, whoa, that is really an advantage. And that's why that's true sharing. Airbnb clearly has a network externality loop going. The more rooms are available, the more interesting Airbnb becomes for short-term renters. And the more short-term renters are there, the more interesting it becomes for hosts to actually go on Airbnb. These network externalities that Airbnb unquestionably has as a platform, are these network externalities global? Who thinks they are global? Like the network externalities literally span the globe. More people in X means more people in Y, and so on. Who thinks they are global? All right. Okay, good. Who thinks they are maybe regional, so let's say country level? And who thinks they are local, like city, Seoul? Well, I mean, Airbnb, if they add an apartment, let's say in London, would that be interesting for, let's say, a student in Seoul that plans a trip to Europe? Yeah, right? So having more offer in London increases the power of Airbnb's model in Seoul. Actually, and vice versa, right? Because having more customers here is also of relevance, obviously, for the guy over there. So that basically means that Airbnb's network externalities are an example of a truly global loop, truly global reach. And as such, when we look at this model here, we have to push them like all the way over here in an area of a pretty strong advantage, right? So perhaps no wonder that they are worth a lot more than Marriott here, because they have low-cost assets, huge network externalities, and they're somewhere in between on that compliance thingy here.